I welcome you all to the module 4 of the course titled Applied Positive Psychology. So this module 4 is about mindfulness and flow, and this is third lecture of this module, and overall this is lecture number 12. So today's lecture is titled as Interventions for Cultivating Mindfulness and Flow. So in this module, the earlier two lectures were individually dedicated to one lecture to mindfulness and one lecture to flow. In today's lecture, we will kind of combine both these and see the relationship between them, and mostly focus on some of the interventions that are available for both mindfulness and flow. So this will kind of combine the two individual lectures that we had, and more specifically focusing on the interventions. So before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture. So the last lecture was about the concept of flow, where we tried to discuss and defined the flow and the various conditions associated with it. We discussed some of the models available for flow to explain. We also discussed various conditions for flow to happen, and we also discussed 9 dimensions of flow. Means there are different 9 characteristics of flow state. We discussed all of them. We also discussed different activities which are conducive for flow to happen and which are not conducive for flow to happen. And at the end, we discussed what are the possible consequences or impact of flow on our mind and functioning aspect. And at the end, we discussed what are the possible dangers of flow state. That flow state can also have some negative possibilities, which we should be careful about. So these are the things that we discussed in the last lecture. In the today's lecture, we'll be focusing on extending from the earlier lecture on flow. We'll start the lecture with some of the possible intervention for facilitating flow, or how can we facilitate flow state in our life. So a little bit of intervention because the last lecture was mostly on theoretical concepts. Here we'll be talking a little bit more on the interventional side. Then we'll also discuss the relationship between the flow state and the mindfulness that we discussed in the first lecture of this module, and we'll see how they are connected to each other. And at the end, we'll be discussing some mindfulness-based therapeutic interventions that are available. So this will be the flow of this lecture. So let's start. Now let us, just to extend from the last lecture where we discussed all the theoretical aspects of the flow state, let us see some of the possible interventions for flow to happen which are available individually or collectively. The flow principles have been applied to a variety of contexts. In general, 2 types of intervention approaches can be found or can be applied. One is interventions that addresses or aim at shaping activity, structures and environment so that they foster flow or obstruct it less. So one way to foster flow is that you shape the environment or the activities that you do in such a way that they facilitate flow state. Whatever environment one is working, we can change the environment a little bit here and there so that flow can happen more, or the design of the activity that we are doing can be changed a little bit here and there so that it facilitates flow state more. So this is one way of intervention that are available. Another is to assist individuals in finding flow. Another is you don't focus much on the environment, but focus on the individual himself or herself, that help them to find flow state by understanding and clarity what are the conditions necessary and what kind of activities he or she can do and so on. Basically helping individuals to find flow state. So most of the interventions are either in the first category or second category. Both can be helpful, or kind of combination of both of these two. Now just to give an example, one of the best application of flow principle is discussed in the literature which took place in Key School. This is the name of a school called Key School in Indianapolis, USA, where the goal was to foster flow by influencing both environment and the individual. So this school tried to do an experiment where they used both changes in the environment as well as assisting students to find flow state. So they designed this, made changes in the whole school curriculum itself, design of the school itself. What they did is that the school tried to, number one, create a learning environment that foster flow experience. So they modified whole structure of environment in the school itself so that flow can happen more. Second, they help students form interests and develop the capacity to experience flow. So they were given tasks, the kind of activities that they are doing, they were changed or shaped in such a way that student will find flow more in those activities. So they manipulated both environment as well as assisted individuals to find flow state. How they do, for example, some of the things that we can address here. So the school's flow activity center, they made a whole center in the school itself, which is called flow activity center. What kind of things they did? The students were given regular opportunities to actively choose and engage in activities of their own interest, and then pursue those activities without demands or distraction, creating what has been described as serious play-like situation. So these are like play-like activities, but then there is a seriousness involved in it. So they created this flow activity center where students, the whole aim is to facilitate flow state. So what they did, they provided more opportunities to the students in their activity center to actively choose themselves activities which are more interesting to them and pursue those activities where there is a very minimum external demands and extraction, so that they can themselves choose things that they like and pursue them accordingly in a situation which they called as a like serious play-like situations. So there is some structure to it, but there is a sense of choice and freedom also involved in it. To support students' capacity to develop the experience for flow, so that was like some environmental aspect that was changed. To assist students themselves for the capacity to develop for flow state, the teachers encourage students to challenge and stretch themselves. Teachers also provided new challenges to the children to foster growth. So basically, they manipulated, they tried to create more flow-like situation in the activities where the teachers encourage students to find challenging tasks. They are given more challenging tasks where they need to stretch themselves. So there is a kind of requirement of challenge and skill conditions for flow to happen. Teachers also provided new challenges to the children to foster growth and so on. So there was an active involvement of the teacher also. So the school tried to made certain changes in the environment, types of tasks that are given, and also the teachers themselves provided that kind of activities so that student can experience more flow state and so on. So these are some of the examples which that school tried to do in terms of creating a whole center for flow and to facilitate flow among the students. So this is a very good examples where they both manipulated the environment as well as assisted student to experience flow state. Similarly, the principles of flow research have been applied in other settings such as organizations related to police, automobile factory, art museums, and psychotherapies assisting individuals to find flow. So a lot of different organizations also try to include these researches from flow state. Organization related to police and defense forces, where that kind of environment and the changes in the whole work setting were made for flow to happen. Automobile factory, museums, and so on, where there were certain changes in the environment and the whole environmental context were made in such a way that flow can happen more. Psychotherapy is also used. They also tried to facilitate flow state by assisting individuals to find flow states, by helping them doing right kind of things, right kind of activities, and so on. So research has all been done in all these contexts. Now, for facilitating flow, we have already discussed the various dimensions and factors that facilitate flow state. For individual level, if you want to facilitate flow state, we can just summarize here some of the things which will help us to find more flow state in our life. Some of the factors we have already discussed also, but we will be discussing these factors and some other new factors more in the context of applying them. So one is obviously we already discussed is the balance of challenge and skill. So that's the central part. You cannot avoid this aspect while discussing about flow state. So this central factor is for flow state is the presence of challenging activity that is appropriately balanced with individual skill level. So this flow state is facilitated when individuals perceive their skills in alignment with the challenge at hand. Individuals' perception of this balance is crucial. So this is very important. How do you perceive this challenge? Your perception is very important rather than actually what it is, as it determines whether the activity leads to flow or anxiety, with anxiety occurring when challenges exceed the things. So this is very important for flow to experience, whether you do it for yourself or try to implement it in any context or situation. This factor has to be taken into account. So if you want to experience more flow state, do more activities which are more challenging and matches your skills also. And if you want to do it in other context also, try to design activities in such a way that it matches balance the skills and challenge conditions. So that is the most important thing. Research also shows that positive mental attitude obviously is very important in terms of experiencing flow state. For example, Jackson in 1992 found that athletes such as US national champion figure skaters were more likely to achieve flow when they maintained a positive mental attitude. A positive mindset helps to enhance focus and performance, promoting the flow state. So even in sports like situation, people may not experience flow state. Not every sports person experience flow state if they, let's say, feel too much of anxiety and stress and so on. So what is your attitude towards that? So the positive mental attitude with sense of challenge and approaching it with a necessary positive mindset is very much necessary for flow state to happen. If you experience too much of stress and anxiety, obviously it will be detrimental for flow state to happen. So research shows this mental attitude is also very important for flow to happen. Positive emotion obviously is also very important. For example, skater in Jackson studies that we talked earlier reported that experiencing positive emotions before and during competition was beneficial for entering flow. Positive emotion state facilitate the concentration and enjoyment required for the flow. Because one of the major conditions for flow to happen is that you are interested in the task. So there is a positive emotions in it. If you experience too much of stress and anxiety, obviously you will not be able to experience flow state. So this positive emotional state, if it is stimulated before the event or during the event by supporters among the people, for say in the context of sports, then it will help people or sportsmen or in any other condition to enter into flow state much more easily. It will facilitate concentration and enjoyment by promoting positive emotions. So if while doing a task, before doing the task or during the doing task, if there is a conditions which provide you more positive emotions, like support, if you have a lot of supporters around you, this is more likely to going to lead to experience of flow state. Obviously then appropriate focus is the next factor, which is maintaining focus is another crucial factor for flow. Jackson same study also identified that skaters' ability to stay focused free from distraction was essential to achieve flow during performance. This is obviously the central aspects. If you are not able to focus, you cannot succeed in any task, whether it is sports or anything else, and flow will never happen. So necessary focus is obviously important. Intrinsic motivation, we have already discussed the importance of it. If you are not intrinsically motivated in a task, you are doing a task simply because there is a pressure to do it, or you are doing it just because something you will get out of it. If that mindset is there, obviously flow is less likely to happen. So the research by Jackson and also some other researchers, Kowal and Fortier, highlighted that self-determined intrinsic motivation is strongly linked to flow. Athletes who engage in an activity for intrinsic reasons, such as personal enjoyment, are more likely to experience flow compared to those who are driven by extrinsic rewards. So the research has been very clear on this. If you are more intrinsically interested in a task, you are more likely to experience flow state as compared to someone who is doing this task for external motivation. So for enhancing flow state, obviously more you do intrinsically motivated tasks, there is a more chances of experiencing flow state. Another factor that research shows is about planning and preparation also can influence your flow state. So Jackson 1995 and Jackson's another study in 1998 found that athletes who engaged in thorough planning and preparations were more likely to experience flow state. So the more you prepare beforehand, everything is planned, so that will help you to control, you will be much more in control of the task. which is very important, one of the characteristics of flow state to happen. If while doing the task you don't know where to go, what to do and so on, in this confused state, flow state is not likely to happen. So planning and preparation is also very important. So these factors ensure that individuals feels ready to meet the challenges presented by the activity. So beforehand you are mentally prepared, so you can actively do whatever is required in the situation because you have already prepared yourself. So that is more likely to create flow state. 7 is connected to that preparation is control over action. Research by Grove and Lewis 1996 and Pates and Maynard 2000 suggested that flow can be enhanced by the ability to control one's action, which may be improved through techniques such as hypnosis or psychological skills training. This method helps athletes manage their focus and control over performance, promoting flow. So this control over action could be very psychological thing in terms of some people, even though they may be very good at task in terms of skills, still they feel that they will not be able to perform, they may fail and so on, lot of self-doubt, lack of confidence, all this thing, even though you may have actually a lot of skills, you still will not be able to enter into flow state and your best performance state simply because of your self-doubt and lack of confidence. So in such conditions, things like hypnosis or psychological skill training in terms of preparing mentally it can be very beneficial in terms of experiencing flow state or promoting flow state or enhancing performance. Research by Hussain et al. 2006 and another research in 2007 showed that interventions involving imagery and relaxation techniques help athletes increase confidence, maintain focus and control their actions, all of which contributed to flow during the performance. These skills are seen as essential for mastering tasks and entering flow. So all kinds of psychological training like relaxation training, which can manage your anxiety and stress, your sense of control, all these can facilitate flow state because they will prepare you mentally to enter into flow state, because mental focus and that's right kind of mindset, positive mindset is very important for flow state to happen. So many times, even though you may have skills, but still may not be able to enter flow states because of all the other psychological hindrances, which can be decreased or lessened by psychological techniques like relaxation techniques and other interventions. Some research has also suggested that setting personal goals that are attainable, challenging and well defined can promote sense of control and persistent in mastering the task. This persistence in turn support the development of the skills necessary for the flow to happen. So what kind of goal you set for yourself is also very important. If you set a goal which is attainable, you can attain. If you set a goal which is unattainable and impossible to achieve, obviously you will get frustrated and one will not enter in the state of flow state while pursuing those goals. So goals which are attainable but necessary, there is challenge also involved in it, which are very well defined, not an abstract, you don't know what is their goal is all about, very clearly well defined goals. All this can promote sense of control, sense of persistence and promotion of flow state. So this was briefly about some of the interventional part of flow, what factors we can focus on in terms of promoting flow state. Now this lecture is also about finding relationship between flow and mindfulness. So we have already discussed some of the factors which can lead to facilitate flow state. Now another important thing is that which can be very strongly connected to flow state is mindfulness. So that is why these two concepts are discussed in one module. So let us see what is the connection between these two states, or can one facilitate other. So when we talk about flow and mindfulness, there are certain differences we have already discussed individually. So just some of the difference I have summarized here in a tabular form. In a flow state is obviously a complete immersion in the activity where there is a focus, high challenge, high skill situation. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment on purpose and without judgment. So mindfulness is more of a broad attention is paid in the present moment. May not be on very specific things, but might like you bring your attention to the present moment. Flow is very task oriented, you get immersed in the task. So both are present oriented things, but then breadth of the focus are different. So in flow, there is a deep singular focus on specific task often leading to loss of self-consciousness. So there is a very singular focus on the task that you are doing in the flow state. Mindfulness is very open, broad awareness of the present moment. So you are broadly present in the moment. Whatever comes in the present moment, you just observe them. On the other hand, flow state is very focused on specific task. Nature of experience, the flow state is highly rewarding experience characterized by effortless concentration, optimal performance. So performance wise, flow is very rewarding state. Mindfulness is non-judgmental awareness of whatever arises without striving for any particular outcome. So outcome is not the focus on mindfulness. Flow by definition is highly functional and it's very positive outcome oriented state. Goal orientation often with clear objectives and challenges. So there is a very specific goal orientation in flow state with a very clear objective and challenges in the flow state. In the mindfulness, this non-goal oriented focus is of the awareness rather than achieving specific results. So mindfulness is more of just coming to the present moment. Goal orientation is not much the focus. Temporal focus, if you see, there is an intense focus on the present moment in the flow state, often with altered perception of time. In case of mindfulness, awareness of time as it unfolds without any distortion or attachment to it. So if you see all these differences, they are primarily talking about flow is more of an intense focus state. Mindfulness is a broad, present oriented attention, which may not be specifically focused on one thing. So all these things, if you see, these are mostly in the same direction. So in flow state, there is a sense of control and mastery. In mindfulness is more of an acceptance of whatever happens. In terms of performance, flow is more performance oriented with the peak performance, optimal achievement. Mindfulness is more of an well-being oriented. It has a more impact on the well-being, emotional well-being, regulation and so on. It's not more on performance oriented, which can have positive impact on performance, but mostly it is mostly looked at, it has a positive impact on our emotional well-being and so on. Flow state is again very temporary state. We can be in that state for some time. It can be fluctuate based on the task challenge and skill required. Mindfulness can be a very long-term practice. Obviously, when you do it, it can be short-term, but then there is an idea that you have to consistently practice it, cultivate through meditation and apply daily life. Flow is commonly linked to high-level performance in activities like sports, music. Mindfulness is often linked to stress reduction, emotional regulation and so on. The relationship is, in case of flow, can be facilitated by mindfulness, but they are distinct state. Mindfulness can help create the conditions for flow by improving focus and present moment awareness. So the idea is flow state, we can facilitate flow state by mindfulness, practice of mindfulness. So that is the main connection here, which we want to kind of focus on here. So the lot of research shows that if you are able to maintain mindful state, it will facilitate flow state in a much better way, because flow state also requires you to focus on the present moment, and mindfulness prepares your mind to be in the present moment, which is the foundation for flow to happen. So in that sense, both are strongly connected to each other, and particularly mindfulness can facilitate flow state. Let us see more on this aspect. So this present moment awareness is essential for experiencing flow state. Flow is characterized by that immersion in the task where individual is absorbed by the experience of it. So this present moment awareness is a common thing in both the, is common in both flow state and mindfulness. So that is where the link is connected. So this deep focus and awareness can be cultivated through mindfulness. So this whole necessary condition for present moment awareness, it can be cultivated by the mindfulness, because the focus of mindfulness is developing this awareness only. The growing popularity of mindfulness-based approaches in psychology reflects the widespread recognition and benefits of fully being in the present moment. So that whole foundational requirement of flow state can be very systematically developed using mindfulness. So that is what we have discussed. This present moment awareness is also key component of flow state as well as mindfulness making these two constructs interrelated. So this is where the relationship is. Otherwise, they are very different constructs. Their relationship comes from this concept of present moment awareness. Both have this aspect. Otherwise, they are very different constructs. Flow, which is often associated with high level performance in various contexts, can be natural outcome of mindfulness in challenging situations. So this flow state can be very naturally built through the practice of mindfulness. So interestingly, sports psychologists have been teaching athletes about mindfulness without actually explicitly using this term for many years, helping them enhance the focus and performance. A lot of these sports psychologists who try to enhance the functioning of the sports person, that is the mission of sports psychologists, they have been using mindfulness like technique from the very long time without actually naming it as a mindfulness things. So this has always also been there in the past. So this cultivating present moment awareness enhances the quality of one's experience and can lead to performance outcome that surpasses previous level of achievement. So this moment awareness, which can be cultivated by mindfulness, can also enhance performance level. So when a performer is fully engaged and focused on the task, which is a part of flow experience, their performance tends to improve, and this deep concentration may facilitate experiences of the flow. So these are like different ways of saying how they are connected. So mindfulness training is an effective way to develop present moment awareness, and there are various approaches to teaching mindfulness. So we have already discussed about mindfulness earlier, and we have seen there are different ways how can we develop this present moment awareness. Flow, as we have seen, is an optimal state because it involves complete focus on the present moment where nothing disrupts the concentration. In flow, both external and internal distraction are absent, allowing full immersion in the activity. So this state of present moment awareness aligns with the goals of mindfulness, suggesting that helping individuals become more mindful can create the conditions for experiencing flow. So that is the where connection we have been focusing again and again, that how both are connected to each other. So creating mindful state may create right condition for flow to experience much more easily, and improving our performance, focus, attention, and so on. So let us see some of the empirical evidence in this direction. Several studies provide this research support or empirical support for the idea that mindfulness can enhance flow state. So there are certain research already showing that in the research context that practice of mindfulness can actually experience flow state. For example, Key and Wang 2008 found a correlation between individual tendency to be mindful and their self-reported flow experiences in college athletes. So they found that there is a positive correlation. The individuals who are more likely to be mindful, the tendency of mindfulness is higher. They also reported more flow experiences in the athletic context. Other research like Herne and other people assessed the impact of mindfulness training on college athletes and found that a group who received mindfulness training showed increased flow score in the dimensions such as clear goal and the sense of control as measured by flow state scale. So research also shows that there is a positive impact of mindfulness training, especially among athletes, that this practice has led to higher experience of flow state in the athletic situation. Other research also found association between mindfulness and flow in elite athletes as measured by dispositional flow scale. So research also shows that mindfulness and flow are kind of positively connected to each other among athletes. So there are diverse research that shows in the same directional, all the findings are in the same direction, which shows that mindfulness can promote flow state. Kaufman and colleague also found in a 4-week intervention study with athletes. So this was an intervention study where 4 weeks training was given to the athletes. The researchers developed a mindful sports performance enhancement program where they were taught about mindfulness, which extended mindfulness-based stress reduction program and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which we'll be talking a little bit later about what are these. These are like different intervention programs that are based on mindfulness, and these were taught to athletes. 4-week program, Kaufman and colleagues found improvement in flow score measured by the flow state scales during the course of the program. So they also, in this focused intervention program, they also found mindfulness-based program actually enhanced their flow state in the athletic context also. So other research, some of this we have already discussed. Other research also created high and low flow group based on responses to flow scale. And they found that the high flow group had higher mindfulness score. So other way around also research shows the same response. Students or the athletes or the group of participants who scored higher in flow actually also reported a higher score in mindfulness also, suggesting that athletes with a greater propensity for flow also had a greater disposition of mindfulness. So both way the result were found. Higher flow state, higher mindfulness state lead to higher flow state, and research also found the people with higher flow state are also more mindful score in terms of that. So this led to the conclusion that propensity to achieve flow state may be enhanced by increasing mindfulness. And this is something very again and again shown by research evidences that flow state or your ability to experience flow state will enhance through the practice of mindfulness state. So obviously there is a clear problem with the directionally which leads to which, but there is a general understanding. Directionality problem between flow and mindfulness remains an area for further research, but Key and Wang suggest that the relationship is more like symbiotic, each promoting the other. So both are strongly interconnected to each other. Given the elusive nature of flow, developing mindfulness skill as a pathway to flow experience makes sense more in terms of applied perspective. Since flow you cannot directly, because the flow is more of an elusive state, intervention for flow is not very structured. It may require a lot of things. So in that context, for applied perspective, developing mindfulness for promoting flow is a better approach, because research have shown it can promote flow state. Because intervention for mindfulness is much more clear, focused, and much more easily it can be done as compared to flow state, which may require a lot of factors in the environment and so on. So for the applied aspect, promoting mindfulness is a better approach in terms of enhancing flow state. Now let us look at some of the mindfulness-based therapeutic interventions that are available, because this particular lecture is focused on some of the applied interventional aspect also. Flow state we have already discussed some of the interventional aspects, and then we looked at the connection. Now let us look at some of the applied interventions available in the mindfulness-based aspect, particularly in the therapy interventions, because mindfulness is mostly used in the therapeutic aspect also. So mindfulness-based therapies incorporate mindfulness principles to help individual develop this awareness, mindful awareness, which is present moment awareness. Now these therapies can include formal practices like meditating quietly for extended period, as well as informal exercises such as applying mindfulness to daily routine and so on. So there are varieties of things that can be done based on different approaches. So as the popularity of mindfulness is rapidly growing, the number of studies investigating the benefits of mindfulness-based therapies for people suffering from psychological problems are also increasing. Since there are a lot of therapies that include mindfulness-based therapies are increasing very rapidly, primarily because research shows its impact is very strong in terms of treating psychological problems and disorders and so on, which are of like moderate nature or mild nature, or for generally enhancing well-being. So a lot of therapies actually were developed which are based on mindfulness, or some of the existing therapies included mindfulness in their whole paradigm. So we'll be talking about some of these such interventions or therapies that are available. The benefits of mindfulness-based therapies, there are so many researches available in this context. As we have already seen, mindfulness-based research on effectiveness, efficacies of mindfulness-based interventions and therapies has grown tremendously in the last few decades. And you can see a lot of research has been done in almost varieties of psychological disorder context. So some of these findings are listed here. So mindfulness-based therapies effectively reduced all these psychological disorder issues. In the context of attention deficit disorders, mindfulness can very strongly act as an intervention, primarily because mindfulness directly addresses the attention problem. Even in psychosis, some serious psychological disorders where there is a disconnection from the reality, mindfulness has been found to be important, or at least it facilitates or promotes in terms of recovery and so on. Eating disorders, mindfulness has also been used as a therapy for people with eating disorders, people who, let's say, they cannot regulate their eating and so on, or some people, they don't even eat too less and so on. So which are mostly psychological issues, not like body related issues. So there also mindfulness has really have been found to be very effective, simply because you become more connected with your body and mind. You see them with a distance and can objectively assess what is right and wrong. Bipolar disorders, also mindfulness has been used and found to be beneficial. So bipolar disorders are those disorders where there is a cycle of depression and mania. So person goes into depression for some time, then there is a cycle of mania, the person become overly happy and so on, which is at the abnormal level, and then again goes to the depression, again goes to the mania, so this cycle goes on and on. So in those cases also, mindfulness has been found to be effective in terms of at least addressing some of the aspects of the disorder. Depression also can be treated with the mindfulness-based therapies. Chronic pain management also, mindfulness can be helpful. Anxiety disorders has also been shown to be, the people get benefit using mindfulness-based therapies. Addiction is another area where mindfulness is very helpful, because coming out of addiction is very difficult, until and unless you really go deeper into your mind and structure of mind, and you see the pattern that you develop, it very strong patterns of moving towards something. So mindfulness has been found to be very, very important therapy in terms of treating addictions. Then there are trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder also. Mindfulness has been found to be beneficial in some. So if you see overall, almost it included almost all varieties of disorders. Mindfulness can be effective in terms of addressing most of these disorders. Obviously they meet some specific, more customized aspects of looking into them. Some disorder may require one medication also and so on, but mindfulness can help in certain aspect of these disorders in terms of treatment and so on. Now if you look at some of the therapies where mindfulness is directly integrated, there are various mindfulness based therapies available. I'll just highlight these three therapies which are very strongly based on mindfulness based aspect. One is called as mindfulness based stress reduction program, which we have discussed a little bit in the first lecture of this module, where John Kabat-Zinn, who introduced mindfulness in the academia, he developed this mindfulness based stress reduction program, which is highly successful. Then there is a mindfulness based cognitive therapy. So mindfulness was also integrated with the existing cognitive therapies, so it became mindfulness based cognitive therapy. There is something called also as an acceptance and commitment therapy, which is also called ACT therapy. ACT, there also mindfulness is very strongly integrated. So let me briefly talk about each of them, because each of these interventions or therapeutic processes, they include mindfulness very strongly in all these therapies. The first is a mindfulness based stress reduction program, which is in short called as MBSR. So let us see what is this. So this mindfulness based stress reduction program was first, it's a therapeutic program that integrated mindfulness into clinical practice. It is one of the first therapy actually, or intervention program where mindfulness was actually integrated into the clinical practice. Originally designed to support patient with chronic pain in medical settings, just to manage that pain and so on. It was developed by John Kabat-Zinn in the early 80s. MBSR consists of 8-week group sessions. So these are like mostly done in a group session, each lasting 2.5 to 3 hours each session, typically with around 30 participants. So mostly these are done in a group sessions. Individually can also be done, but mostly These are done in a lot of Western hospitals and so on, where a group of people actually come together and then these programs are implemented on them. Each session can last from 2.5 to 3 hours. Additionally, participants are expected to complete daily home practices. So every day some home practices are also given, which may include things like meditation and yoga for 45 minutes, 6 days a week throughout the treatment process. So it is a very extensive program where a lot of involvement and commitment is required for such programs to get benefit out of it. MBSR often begins with a body scan exercise. We have discussed little bit of it in the first lecture, where we discussed practice of mindfulness. So how body scans are done, where participants are guided to observe sensation throughout their body from toes to head without judgment or effort to alter this sensation for about 40 to 45 minutes. So one of the things includes a body scan meditation exercise, where the participants are learn to connect with their body through the sensations, which may include breathing, focusing on breathing also, and getting connected to the sensations in the body, which could be very strongly linked to emotions also. So, and they are taught how to observe them without really identifying with them or without getting influenced by them. Following this mindful yoga, a gentle practice designed to cultivate awareness and relaxation. So other practices related to increasing awareness and relaxation techniques are also taught to them. Many people find that mindful yoga helps them to relax more easily while staying present. So that is also another aspect to this program. Another key element of this MBSR is sitting meditation, where participants focus on their breath and gradually breathing and gradually expand their attention to other aspects like sound, emotions and thoughts. Some of these practices we have discussed in the first lecture of this module, where we have discussed how mindfulness can be practiced. So there include breathing exercises. Breathing exercise not like breathing in terms of not changing breathing, but focusing on the breathing. Then also expanding attention to sounds, emotions, thoughts and so on. Walking meditation, which we also already discussed. Similar to other mindfulness practices, encourage participants to notice bodily sensation associated with walking and so on. So these are also included in the program, and the diverse practices are included. The final core practice in MBSR is loving kindness meditation, in which participants intentionally direct feelings of kindness and compassion towards various beings. So you just achieve a state of kind state, loving kindness, where you just be in a state where you just show your loving and kindness towards any being in the world. So this meditation is seen as a central to many adaptation of MBSR programs for diverse applications. So goodwill, you just manifest goodwill and a good intention for other people and so on. This state also has a lot of healing impact and so on. So additionally, MBSR promotes informal mindfulness practices in everyday life. So this, once you learn this more structured program, then they also taught you to include it in everyday life, encouraging participants to incorporate brief mini meditations during daily activities such as waiting in line or sitting in traffic, helping integrate mindfulness beyond formal sessions and so on, so that you integrate it more and more into daily activities. So these are some of the aspects of MBSR, or mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which are very structured program which teaches peoples and patients to develop mindfulness and treat various psychological disorders and issues. The next program is called MBCT, which means mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So this mindfulness-based cognitive therapy was developed by CBT expert, cognitive behavioral therapy expert, John Tisdale, Mark Williams and Zindel Siegel, in response to challenges they faced preventing depression relapse. So they are having this cognitive behavior therapy, which basically focuses on changing thought processes. If you look at depressed patients, their problem is how they think about themselves, and the world is very pessimistic. So that leads to the symptoms of depression and so on. So thought processes are quite faulty. So cognitive behavior therapy, where only they focus on changing thoughts, they found it shifts their thought processes, but then they again relapse back very quickly. They again become depressed. So they were having this issue. So they integrated mindfulness in their therapy itself to address this relapse problem. So many individuals who had recovered from depression experienced a high risk of relapse. So again they become depressed actually after the treatment. Using this cognitive behavior therapy which was given alone, only cognitive behavior therapy. So it was not sufficiently addressing the depressed patient. So since they became familiar with the success of mindfulness-based stress reduction program which we discussed just now, they decided to combine some of its principle with their therapy, which is cognitive behavior therapy, and that became MBCT, which means mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So this is cognitive therapy, but where mindfulness is integrated in it. Now, a key distinction between normal cognitive behavior therapy, where there is no mindfulness, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy lies in their approaches of cognitive change, how they focus on change. So cognitive behavior therapy, where there is no mindfulness, emphasizes three main things. That cognition influences behavior. Cognition broadly means your thought processes, belief system and so on. They are main reasons for your behavior. Cognition can be identified and altered. So we can identify the faulty thought processes and change them. 3. Behavioral change occurs through cognitive change. So we can change our cognitions or thought processes or belief system, and this change will lead to change in our behavior. So these are the main principles. So they focus only on changing thought processes only, because thoughts are major reasons behind your behaviors and emotions. So if you change your thoughts, emotions will also improve, your behavior will also improve. So that is the main idea in cognitive behavior therapy. So basically they focus on helping clients actively change their thoughts which impact their behavior. So that is the main idea in behavior therapy. However, in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which was kind of modified cognitive behavior therapy, it encourages client to observe thoughts non-judgmentally rather than replacing them, because they integrated mindfulness program here, and mindfulness never focuses on changing thoughts, because if you change thoughts, again thoughts may change in some other forms. So mindfulness doesn't bother with changing thoughts or making any connection with thoughts or any relationship with thoughts. Mindfulness simply says, just don't even try to replace them. Just observe them non-judgmentally. By nature, thoughts are very short term. They will come and go. You don't have to really change them or do anything. By doing this, you will just reduce the influence of thoughts. So thoughts will not influence you. So anyway, the whole impact of thought will be reduced. So the goal is for clients to develop a healthier relationship with their thoughts rather than changing thoughts, viewing them without attachment. So attachment is the problem, where you remove this whole relationship with the thought. You don't get attached to thoughts. Whatever thought says, you don't become that. Rather, you just create a detached observational stand, and then the thought will not really have an impact on you. So that is the difference between normal cognitive therapy, where they try to replace thoughts, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, where they don't try to replace thought, but rather they change the relationship with the thought in a sense that you just observe them without judging them. So that's the difference. So MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, consists again like 8-week sessions, which are more when you go to structured therapy session, each lasting for 2 hours with about 12 participants, more smaller participants group. It draws from MBSR practice, which we discussed earlier, mindfulness-based stress reduction program, with the exceptions of loving kindness meditation, which was included in mindfulness-based stress reduction program. Here they don't include it. The loving kindness meditation. So the one unique mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT technique, is that 3-minute breathing space, which involves 3 steps. 1, focusing on internal experiences by asking, what is my experience right now? To observe present sensation without judgment. So just focus on the present moment and sensation, and don't judge it, don't label it, and so on. Second, concentrating on the sensations of breathing So when you focus on breathing, just focus on the sensations of breathing. Third, broadening this awareness to encompass entire body, maintaining non-judgmental perspective. So basically you connect with your body, you start with the sensations in the body, then breathing, then you extend it to the entire body, maintaining a non-judgmental perspective. So this is like 3 minutes breathing space exercise that is focused on these aspects. So clients are encouraged to practice this technique daily, especially when feeling overwhelmed and so on. So for a brief period of time, daily practice can make a lot of changes. So this is how mindfulness-based techniques were included in the formal cognitive behavioral therapy also, and they found it was much more effective in a lot of context. The third one is called acceptance and commitment therapy, where there also again there is an aspect of mindfulness included in this therapy. So this ACT therapy, ACT or acceptance or commitment therapy, ACT, it differs from the earlier two that we discussed, mindfulness-based stress reduction program and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, as it originates from the behavioral approach and relational frame theory, which emphasizes link between psychology and language. So here they also includes many other things which were not included in the earlier two types of therapies. They also include language, how you talk about things, because language is connected to your thought processes. So ACT integrates mindfulness and acceptance to help individuals shift their focus from specific thoughts and feelings towards behaviors that align with personal values. So here obviously they have very strong mindfulness aspect also, but they also focus on your personal values and aligning your actions according to that also. So it has a lot of other components. So the goal of ACT is to develop psychological flexibility. So that is something, one of the major focus of ACT is that you become much more flexible in your psychological approach, so that it is not so rigid and one-dimensional. You have more perspective to look at, and for that they use mindfulness. So the flexibility is about the ability to stay present and make mindful choices to either change or persist in behavior based on one's values by learning and accept current experiences. So this is the central idea in ACT, and flexibility is about happens when you are able to be mindful, and in this mindful state you can make choices whether to change your behavior or not, or change your behavior according to your values or not. So you have more freedom when you are mindful to change your perspectives and behaviors and do more actions which are more alignment with your values and values. So all these things can be developed using a mindfulness state by learning to accept current experiences and so on. So rather than changing thoughts or feeling themselves, ACT focuses on altering the relationship of these experiences, which is the main idea behind mindfulness. So mindfulness-based approaches don't try to change thoughts, because thoughts by nature they are transitory, they will come and go. You don't have to really struggle with it. You just have to find the right place within you so that they don't disturb you much. By nature, thoughts are all the time changing. You don't have to change them. So that is the main approach in the mindfulness-based all the programs. So this ACT is typically practiced in individual sessions rather than in groups. So the difference here is that most of the ACTs are very individualistic sessions. If you see the other two, where more of a group sessions are preferred, and they include 6 core processes that foster psychological flexibility. So the focus is to develop more psychological flexibility. To bring about that psychological flexibility, they have 6 core processes which are divided into 3 main aspects. So these processes are organized into 3 interconnected response styles. So these are 3 response styles which are generally aimed in terms of developing them. The first one is open, or to become open, which is part of psychological flexibility. The more you are open, the more flexible you are. So this open has 2 important aspects. One is acceptance. So acceptance of what is there in the present moment, and there is something called as a diffusion, which we'll be talking about. And then the next component is aware or awareness. It includes present moment awareness, which is mostly about mindfulness, and finding self as a context, which we'll be talking about. Then the third one is called active or engaged. This is engaged part, which includes things like finding values, committed actions, and so on. So let's see these three and their sub aspects. So open includes acceptance, bringing experiences without attempt to altering them, especially when they bring psychological discomfort. And diffusion means viewing thoughts and language as flexible and not inherently controlling. So basically diffusion means what? You view thoughts and language that we speak as a flexible, and they cannot directly control you. They are flexible. You can change them the way you want. Thoughts are also like that. So in a sense, so you can use this technique of acceptance and diffusion technique to become more open. Second is awareness, or awareness which involves self as a context. Means understanding that self exists independently of thoughts and experiences. So one thing we need to understand here is that when we talk about self in the mindfulness context, self is the foundation, and thoughts and other things are peripheral thing that comes and goes. So that is what we should understand. Self exists independently of thoughts and experiences, and present moment is about engaging fully with current experiences without judgment, which is mainly mindfulness aspect of it. So this develops your awareness. You become much more aware in the present context, where you see self as a context. From the self you see the experiences because they are different from you, and the present moment both gives you sense of awareness. The third component is active, which includes values, means clarifying life direction. We all have different value systems, the directions in life, what we want and so on. And committed actions means taking concrete steps aligned with values, achieving meaningful goals. So committed actions are about taking concrete steps to reach your goals, which are according to your values systems, whatever goal you want to achieve and so on. So these three and each are divided into two more components, so total 6 components. These are all important to increase psychological flexibility and psychological health and so on. So the ACT tries to increase all these aspects to make people psychologically healthy and psychological flexibility, to increase psychological flexibility. So together these elements promote a balanced approach to life's experiences, fostering resilience and purposeful action and overall psychological health and so on. So these are some of the things that are focused in ACT. So these are some of the things which are very important aspects of mindfulness concepts, and we can see that the mindfulness has a lot of practical implication because of which they have been integrated into the formal therapies. And we also discussed flow as a state in this module, where we discussed that flow is a very highly functional state where we function very effectively with to our best of capabilities in the flow state. And both this flow state and mindfulness are very interconnected to each other. In a sense, from the applied perspective, developing mindful state, which is much more easier, it can be done, and we have discussed how it can be done, can also increase the possibility that we experience more flow state in what we do in our life. So both these concepts are practically, in applied perspective, they are very significant and has a lot of diverse applied implications. So we have discussed all these things in this module, and with this I stop here. Thank you.